Which of the kindred archetypes is strongest? Can Descend succeed? How strong is crafting? We've got a lot to discuss today.
Welcome to the MTG Rebellion. I'm FourStar, your lead drafter. Let's jump right into Lost Caves of Ixalan, Week 0. Okay, so to start out here, this is again completely tentative internet, so don't jump on us too much here. But these are our Week 0 tiers as far as the draft archetypes based on the spoiler reviews that we've done so far. So far, what looks like the most powerful to me is going to be the Rakdos Descend deck. It's going to be an aggressive deck that triggers abilities based on things leaving play, which is going to be going on a lot in this format. Simic Explorer. Explorer was great before. I think it's going to be pretty good again. Being able to get lands and card selection is going to be pretty good. Dimir Descend, it's going to be a little slower variant of it, but I think Descend is going to be a very powerful ability, so that's why it's up in tier 1. Early in a format, Gruul Dinos, red, green things, kill stuff, attack with stuff. It's always good early. In the second tier, we're looking at Is It Treasure? It's going to be a little pirate sub-theme. This deck could easily jump up into tier 1 depending on the availability of the uncommons in it. Or Zav Vamps or Sacrifice is going to be more of a mid-range deck that, depending on the uncommon runs, could be good or really bad. Golgari mid, you're going to get a lot of the Descend and Explorer things, so maybe just jam everything together and have it be good. The decks in tier 3 that I don't think are going to be good right out of the gate, Selesnya counters or buff, if you will, being able to pump up your guys to get value. I think it's going to be too hard to set up without interaction from your opponent. The Boros tap deck, you really have to see it in action to see if it's going to be playable or not. And Azorius Craft, the craft mechanic, I have a gut feeling is going to be a little too slow, so I have it in tier 3 to start out.
Fair. Let's put a minute on the clock. Let's talk about the mechanics of the set, starting with Explore.
You bet. Everybody, Explore is back. We loved it before. I think you're going to love it again. For those of you who haven't done exploring before, a creature that explores or has Explore effectively means when it comes into play, you have an Explore trigger that goes on the stack. You will reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a land, great, it goes right into your hand. If it is a non-land card, then you have a choice. You can either put the card back on top, or you can put it in your graveyard. Regardless of what you do with that card, though, the creature that explored gets a +1/+1 counter permanently. Basic Explore in a nutshell.
So we don't have like a Wild Growth Walker in this set. Is Explore good enough, right? Like, is it good enough?
I think it is, especially in limited, just because you always want to hit lands, you always want to get value, and this is kind of like a scry or a I forget the ability where you look at it and you can bin it.
Surveil.
I forget the ability. Surveil, yes, that one. Sorry, it's basically that. So lands and card selection is always good in limited.
Fair enough. I'm not sure if it gives Merfolk a shot in Constructed, but we'll see, since a lot of these Explorer cards seem to go with it.
Very possible. We do have some banger rares that are going to make fish pretty good.
Fair. Well, let's go on to the next one. We have a brand new one coming in now. This is map tokens.
You bet. So this is kind of a spin-off of Explore, but it's a lot worse in my opinion. So a map token is just literally a token. You can pay 1 colorless mana at sorcery speed, and you target a creature of yours. Unfortunately, you can't target your opponents. But when that does, you basically say target creature explores. So you do the same, assuming it resolves, you do the Explore ability on that. So you can do this for card selection later, but more often than not, I think the map tokens are going to be used for sacrifice fodder or craft fodder. So that's basically maps.
So when we look at map tokens, they look kind of like lesser iterations of the clue tokens, which was the last time they tried to do like a minor drawback. We saw that with Fateful Absence in Standard, seeing some play, but not a ton. Do we think map tokens are just weaker than clue tokens as we keep going here?
100%. I think they're weaker because the clues are unconditional cards, and these are potentially visible effects that will just get removed from the stack if the creature gets removed. So
fair. Now this next mechanic is Descent, and it's got a lot of different iterations that they threw in with the set. So let's cover all the weirdness of Descent here.
It does. It looks complex up front, but trust me, everyone, it really isn't that bad. So the first one is going to be Descend 4 in this instance on Akawali. So descend 4 or 2, whatever it's going to be, basically counts permanent cards in your graveyards. So if at any time you have 4 permanents in your graveyard, the card or spell will have an additional text on it. In this case, this gets bigger, or a spell will be more powerful. There's another instance here next door, Fathomless Descent, which counts how many cards were put into the graveyard at a time in each instance of it. There's also a descending ability, which will count each individual one going as well, but it's kind of a static check. So as long as you have that satisfied permanently in your yard, the cards will get better, is the short way to look at it. If a card leaves, it'll lose the ability as a static as well.
So with multiple types of how Descent's working, is graveyard removal going to be a priority when you're drafting?
Graveyard removal is going to be a lot more important in this set than it is before, and keep in mind as well, only permanent cards leaving play trigger it, tokens leaving will not.
Fair. That is a very important thing to remember with tokens. Let's move on, though. The hot new mechanic in this set that everybody's all about right now, it's Discover.
You bet. So Discover, it's kind of Cascade light. If you have Cascaded before, effectively what this means is when this card enters play, if you cast it, you discover 3. What Discover means is you will exile cards from the top of your deck until you hit a non-land card with CMC, the Discover number, or less. So in this case, 3. So if you hit a 3, it's a 3. If you hit a 1 or 2, it also stops on that as well. When that card is revealed and you hit 1, you get to cast it for free. If you want to cast it for free, great, cast it, get value. However, unlike Cascade, you're not forced to cast it in this case. So if you hit a 1 and it's a combat trick or a card you don't want to play right now, you can simply put it into your hand instead of not casting it and put it back on the bottom of your deck before. So in Limited, I think this is going to be a lot better than straight up Cascade, but it's obviously less powerful because you can't control what you hit every time.
Gotcha. So when we talk about Cascade versus Discover and which one shines in each scenario, where do you think Cascade is just outright stronger?
Cascade is outright stronger in the older formats, Modern, Legacy, and things like that, but the decks are literally built around only being able to hit the card you want to hit, and Limited, you don't have the option of crafting a deck per se where you can't hit a card you don't want. Like, I'm not going to not put 1s and 2s in my deck just because I don't want to hit them on turn 10. So it's a little bit different in this case, but it's still Cascade versus this. Discover is just value in Limited, which is where I want to be.
Gotcha. So we're talking about Discover as just a and one kind of vibe, whereas Cascade is more of let's go combo centric with it.
Correct.
Okay. Well, let's push on over. We have a finality here.
Sure. So finality is just another way of saying if this were to leave play for any reason, exile it instead. So a lot of these cards will bring things back with a finality counter on them. All that means for everyone to know is just if this card with a finality counter leaves play for any reason, bounced, killed, exiled, whatever, it will just be gone forever. It will not come back.
So if we have this many cards with finality, again, how much exile-based removal is in this set? Do we need to prioritize picking that?
The exile removal spells are not as abundant as I thought they would be, but to make up for that, we do have a lot of cards that attack the graveyard, things that exile cards outright from the yard in order to prevent them from being able to be brought back later. But I didn't think they were going to devote that much to it. But the exile effects are always going to be in Limited, but they're not as abundant as I thought they were going to be.
Okay, so if you see them, you might need to prioritize picking those a little bit higher if you're worried about it, and especially if you don't have any graveyard interaction.
Correct. Exile removal is always going to be better in a vacuum.
Fair. And now on to the other weird but kind of hot mechanic coming out of this, Craft.
Yep, Craft is going to be one of the pushed abilities in this set, but again, I'm hesitant to see if it's going to be good or not until we actually get a lot of games in with it. Craft has a lot of words on it, but don't freak out. It's actually a lot simpler than it looks. Craft is just a keyword ability on a permanent card. So the card is going to have some sort of effect on the front end, so you get to play it straight up. You don't ever have to craft it if you don't want to. Craft effectively means you pay the craft cost. So it will have a mana cost and a exile X amount of things, an island, 5 artifacts, 6 permanents, whatever the cost is. If you pay the craft cost, sorcery speed, it exiles the card with craft and all the things that are being crafted with it. All those things happen, they're exiled, and then the card with craft comes back transformed. So it does leave play and comes back into play flipped on the other side, and then you get a more powerful card. Once the craft cost is paid, though, all the cards are gone. So once you pay the craft cost, you can't interact with it. One other thing, you can craft something that's in play or in the graveyard. So if you happen to have an artifact that died earlier in the game and the card says craft with an artifact, you can choose to craft it with the card in the yard as well. So that gives additional value to cards that go to the yard for value later.
So when we talk about craft and the fact that it's pushed in this set, I look over here and I see that we only have it in tier 3 land. So, I mean, how strong is it actually going to be? You know what I mean?
You bet. Pushed is a thing. Functionality is another thing. I really think it's going to be a little slow. I mean, you have cards that have craft costs of like 9 and sorcery speed is always scary to me because it takes too long and they can kill things, they can bounce it, and a lot of the craft cards that when they come back, they don't have a game altering effect on them straight up. So I don't want to pay 5 mana for the front half, 9 mana for the second half to make 2/4/4s an instance, which a card we'll see later.
Fair. Well, let's cut over and let's start talking about the top 10 of each rarity in the set based on what you've looked at.
All right, so starting here with commons. So a few of these cards I was extremely excited to see. Abrade, amazing removal spell, playable in almost any format. Very, very good card. Join the Dead. I had to read it twice. This card is insane. I was in love with Candy Grapple in the last set. -5/-5, instant speed for three mana. Sign me up twice. And this with the Send 4, this thing literally kills everything in the set except for that gigantic Galta, which if your opponents are playing that, I'm happy about that as well. So Join the Dead might be my favorite card so far. Glorifier of Suffering. This card is going to be really, really good if the black-white deck takes off. This is effectively travel prep for those of you who've played it before. If this goes off and you have something early to play, being able to put 2 counters on things is going to be really, really insane. The Cloud Guard is going to be very good, just decks that want permanence to craft or sacrifice later. Huato's Final Strike is just another punch. I love punch effects versus fight effects. They're just always very, very good.
Fair. Now, I look over here at the tier list and I see that the 3 at the end are all based in white. Do we think that white is a lower power cover? Because I'm noticing in the commons that we had 3 white commons there and only 1 blue one. And yet blue is pushed quite high. 2 of those are in the tier 1. So where are we at with that?
Correct. So white, so far, I haven't seen a lot of cards that will just take over a game on their own. White is more an enabling color. Blue has, again, more of an enabling cards, but it enables colors that are a lot more powerful. It will enable the blue-black decks, the blue-green decks to explore. The blue-white decks, you're going to just keep casting cards, but none of them are going to be, I have to kill this card right now or I'm going to lose the game. It's kind of a cumulative effect, and I don't think you're going to have time to set it up because you're going to be scrambling to deal with the rares or the synergies that the other decks have.
Fair. Well, let's go on to the uncommons here and talk about those.
You bet. So, Eaten by Piranhas, a flash, basically make it a 1/1 frog. This is going to be a flash removal spell in most cases. Diamond Pickaxe, it took folks a little while to figure out that the pick from the other set was actually very, very good, being able to make treasures over and over again. It just makes blocks really good, and making indestructible is pretty good. The Raptor is just a very, very good aggressive card and will punish your opponents for trying to interact with you on their turn. Scavenger is kind of an eternal witness. I think that you'll be able to actually trigger a lot more than you think. The rest of the cards are just very, very good on rate. Colossal Dactyl of 4/5, reach trample for 4. A 4/5 I'd play straight up without any of these abilities. It's just very good. Bitter Triumph, destroy things. I don't think it's going to be a problem paying the additional cost. The Chupacabra Echo, I think if your deck is set up to go around it, it's going to be very good. Mischievous Pup can save anything you have. I think it's going to be very, very good. And just 6/6s for 6. They're in every set, but this one seems pretty good with the dinosaur theme.
So is there a viable deck, in your opinion, in Gruul that isn't dinosaurs?
Yes, there is, but I think the dinosaur synergies are just going to be good in general. You're just going to be playing efficient green bodies, exploring, and then killing things that are in the way. But a lot of your threats are going to be standalone, where they're going to have to set up a double block or try and waste a premier removal spell to try and kill, and you just overwhelm them.
Fair. Well, let's move on and check out the rares in Ixalan.
You bet. So green has a lot of these in here as well. A 5/5/3 Ward 2 that has a vineyard on it. So this, you play this on 3 or 4, you get to ramp up to 6 and start playing, you know, your heavy hitters earlier. The Hammer Skull on the dinosaur theme. This card, I just had to keep reading to see where the bad ability was on it. As long as you can have a dinosaur in play, this card is going to win a lot of games for you. Mana elves are always good, intrepid, and this guy will let you replay your, you know, your 6/6s later in the game. Get Lost, like you mentioned before, Fateful Absence. It's not going to be good in a longer game per se, unless you really have to kill a bomb, but it's still going to be fine. Sentinel, just a solid thing. I think you can kind of snowball stuff with the explore stuff. Thousand Moons, Souls, Malcolm, all these cards are ones they have to answer on site or they're going to take over the game. Preacher and Terratide, there's always a good sweeper in the format, but this is on the list just because it could be very good in the deck if you were to get it.
So we're seeing, like you said, sort of a heavy green bias and a dino bias here. Is green going to be the strongest color in the set in your opinion?
In my opening opinion, I think green is going to be very, very good. Green will just green has the best creatures that I've seen so far. So yes, I think green is going to be out in front to begin with, at least week 1.
And let's get to the Mythics. That way, if you're real lucky, you get to crack some of these.
You betcha. So all of these deepest cards, the Epic, the Foundation, the Betrayal, I wasn't the biggest fan of the red one, but all of these cards, again, are you have to kill this card or it will take over the game. And surprise, surprise, if you do kill this card outside of exiling it, this thing comes back and it can flip back and forth, and just almost never leave play. Ancient One, if the Descend deck is really as good as I think it's going to be, this card is going to be nuts. It's just going to be very, very powerful, and being able to sift through cards is going to be amazing. Bloodletter, I think in the red-black aggressive deck, this thing is just effectively going to double damage on it. Veto is on the list because it's a 4/4 flyer for 4, always good. Bonehorde Dracosaur, Wizards, what were you thinking? This card does everything. There's nothing bad about this card. Just first pick it every time. Resplendent Angel, again, it's kind of more a pioneer card now, but this card was a limited bomb in the day. And the Chimmel, the Inner Sun, if the game goes long enough, this card is just going to keep getting value over and over again.
So it looks like Black had the best Mythics in the set, having 4 out of 10 here. Which of these Mythics do you put at the top? Like, if you had one at the top, which one is it?
Probably I'm looking at like the deepest black variant. That card just, it does everything, and the deepest iterations, just being able to go back and forth, I think is going to be so hard to deal with because the exile effects are not as abundant as I thought they were. This card's just going to hang around, just wreck your opponent's day over and over again.
Fair. Alrighty, and that concludes our Lost Caverns of Ixalan set review. Comment below, let us know your thoughts, and while you're down there, please remember to like, subscribe, and share us with your friends. And of course, we have a join button for those who can afford to support the Rebellion with just 99 cents a month.
Join us next week as we begin breaking down the limited meta and archetypes for the Lost Caverns of Ixalan.
And until next time, untap, upkeep, resist.